Welcome to First. I'm Nichelle Poston along with Shirley Min and Mark Eichmann. The options for a couple dealing with fertility issues are limited and results are not guaranteed. Research at the University of Delaware may help those odds.
Increasing your odds of learning better social media and web skills is the goal of a new Wilmington startup company. We report on ActGen this week. And
what are the odds of playing a concert at Carnegie Hall? If you're in a special music program with the Brandywine School District, those odds just got a lot better. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
Research is underway to help doctors increase the chance of conception for couples looking to have a baby through in vitro fertilization. The Reproductive Associates of Delaware has teamed up with the University of Delaware to do that research. And this week's First Look will introduce you to some of those involved, including one family that walks us through their fertility journey.
Our relationship has become stronger through the journey that we've had to go through.
That journey was in vitro fertilization, and their little baby Ben is proof of when it's successful. However, it's a costly route that Scott and Jesse never thought they would have to travel.
I felt like it was a car payment that I'm paying, and I'd rather have a beautiful baby than a new BMW.
$16,000 is what the Wilsons had to pay, and that amount didn't include medications that were just as costly.
If you don't want to have a baby, so you take birth control and stuff like that, that stuff's covered, but IVF is not covered, so it's kind of weird.
Here at the Reproductive Associates of Delaware, improving IVF success is important. Dr. Feinberg believes that could happen by researching the nutrient where embryos grow.
We're trying to understand how they're made, how many are made, what these little bodies contain as far as key molecules, whether or not these little bodies talk to the uterus and actually say, hey, uterus, let me in, let me implant, let me form a pregnancy. So there's a lot of questions as we go down the path.
Identifying a healthier embryo early on is key for University of Delaware professor Dr. Patricia DeLeon, who is on the research team.
The more information we get, then the more we can approach it in a new way, and the more closer we get to accuracy.
The Wilsons were quite lucky, only having to undergo one cycle of IVF. For other couples, that's not always the case, which is why this cutting-edge research is necessary and possible thanks to grant money from the Delaware Bioscience Center for Advanced Technology.
Here's a situation where Dr. DeLeon's research just was a natural fit for what Reproductive Associates of Delaware needed to help them find a better way to improve IVF. So, everything came together, but our grant program is ultimately about supporting Delaware's economy by supporting innovative research collaborations with businesses.
Also, identifying a healthy embryo means a healthy pregnancy for IVF couples. According to Dr. Feinberg, multiple cycles can be an expense that burdens the healthcare system.
We've probably saved the healthcare system in Delaware alone probably millions of dollars every year just by avoiding the multiple pregnancy problems and cost. So I think it's just continued evolving practice to try to make things more and more reasonable. I think what scares the insurance companies and employers about covering what we do, it's not so much the cost of what we do here, it's the implications of the costs.
Jessie adds another reason why she thinks insurance companies aren't willing to pay up.
What the insurance company told me was that they don't see it as a necessary medical procedure. So that's why they don't cover it, because you don't have to be pregnant.
However, once there is a positive pregnancy test, even through IVF, Jessie says insurance will kick in. Meanwhile, at RAD, officials say there are thousands of women every year who seek fertility help, and roughly 1,200 to 1,500 patients move forward with treatments.
With me going through it, That's one of the reasons I've been very vocal. And if people ask, I'm very open about my experience because there's not enough people talking about it.
If all goes well with research, it's possible more couples will have the success the Wilsons experienced. But despite the cost of IVF, which could range anywhere between $15,000 to $40,000, Jessie says she wouldn't trade in her fertility journey for the world.
In the end, you forget about that because you end up with a baby in your arms and you just sit there and look at them and you love them and you don't think about all the hardships that you had to go through to conceive that child.
To further explain in vitro fertilization, that's when doctors collect the eggs and sperm and make the fertilization happen outside the uterus in a dish. It's a tedious procedure that handles the fertilized egg carefully right before the early embryo phase.
Nichelle, what's next for the couple in your story?
While the Wilsons surely are extremely grateful for their blessing, Big Ben, I like to call him because he's a big baby, they're actually looking forward to expanding their family in the near future. And hopefully they'll be successful at the next try and produce a baby girl.
So they'll likely go through IVF again.
Yes, exactly. IVF will be their choice.
All right. Thank you so much, Nichelle. We'll continue to report on this issue. You can watch it here on First and check it out at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Rob Torno joins us now for the latest installment of the Torno Spin. Up this week, Rob's artistic take on the varied reaction to last month's prison riot at Vaughn Correctional Center in Smyrna, where obviously a correctional officer was killed. But the incident really kind of brought out varied opinions from folks about what's going on inside Delaware's prisons. Take us through your cartoon.
Right, it's sort of an extension of how we look at inmates nationally, right? You know, you have politicians who run to be very punitive because it's how you show your heart on crime. But as a result, we sort of dehumanize the aspect of being an inmate and being a criminal. Tragically, a correctional officer, Stephen Floyd, lost his life. And as a result, some people look at this through the prism of, well, they did this to this corrections officer, but there might have been reasons behind why they did it. So it's important when Carney is looking at all this to really go into maybe why they felt the need to take such a drastic action to, you know, take over.
But there is some sense in some segments of the community that whatever the terrible conditions are in a prison, that's the way it should be. That it should be terrible conditions, that things don't need to be fixed because it's good that it's bad.
And that's just, you know, sort of a preventative versus a revenge motivation, right? It definitely benefits us to educate and to help, you know, prepare them to enter society. It's just a matter of trying to convince the public of that.
Not the last time we'll talk about it. You can follow Rob's commentary on this conversation on newsworks.org/Delaware. Check him out on Twitter at Rob Torno. Thanks, Rob.
That's right.
Coming up on First, how you handle social media may influence how well you do in the working world. ActGen is set up to improve those skills, and a Wilmington artist shows off his skills using wood, metal, and paper. It's later in First Experience. Over the past decade or more, the focus on education was pointed towards science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM. In the past few years, there has been an A added, and you can call it STEAM. Music is a big part of the arts. It's also a big part of a student educational experience. So let's welcome a new member of the first team, Chris Barish. He's our new Delaware education reporter. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Nichelle. In an era where dollars for orchestra programs can be hard to come by for Delaware schools, an innovative approach by one teacher is blossoming. Her approach is paving the way for one grand experience.
If you put your heart into something, it can take you anywhere. That motivational message, simple yet sublime, is taped to a cabinet in the band room at Concord High School in northern Delaware. Those words describe the journey for about 30 Brandywine School District students. One that will culminate in the performance of a lifetime, April 10th, in Manhattan's fabled Carnegie Hall.
One of the students asked me if they could go, and I found a way to make sure that she could.
Leading the string ensemble's visit to the original home of the New York Philharmonic is Anita Pisano, District Orchestra Director. What makes this trip so unique is that her ensemble, which she built from the ground up over more than a decade, includes students from 3 high schools who only practice together once a week, at night. She initially tutored only a few musicians in each of 6 middle and high schools, pulling them from core classes for brief sessions. She took and continues to take every interested student, from novices who borrow instruments to budding virtuosos.
We allow everyone to be able to be in the ensemble, and that means that if you're coming after school, some don't have transportation, so they would be carpooling or taking 2 buses to get there.
But the program took root and steadily grew to 200 students. Members of the 80-member string ensemble come from Concord, Brandywine, and Mount Pleasant high schools. A few months ago, one senior cellist volunteered that it was her dream to play Carnegie. Pisano asked students to write essays about the notion, and after many moved her, she submitted an audition tape. And voila, the ensemble was selected to appear with 7 other schools at a symphonic series for bands and orchestras.
It means a lot to me, definitely. All of my musical inspirations have played there at least once, so it'll be interesting to follow in their footsteps. No one really expected it, so that just made the excitement greater.
For Concord senior Caitlin Mensa, the orchestra program was the reason she stayed at Concord instead of transferring to another school.
I've been with Miss Pisano for like 10 years. All our hard work and everything we've been through with the program, it's really coming together. And I'm a senior, so it's really nice to have that kind of closure.
As the clock ticks toward April 10th, practices are getting more intense. But each day in class and at their Thursday night sessions, the sound improves, coalesces.
It's exciting and the kids are focused. They have an urgency. These students have been through everything. The crazy rotations of things, pulling out from all over the place, eating dinner in front of their instrument that's on the side of them, and finding time, doing homework as they're walking in the door. And they're all in. They give everything to be able to do this, to play on that stage. And so you deserve this. You absolutely deserve this, just as much as the New York Philharmonic.
You really have to hand it to Mrs. Pisano. She's cobbled this ensemble together for more than a decade. What's also remarkable is that these kids are high achievers and could transfer to charter or private schools, but they have stayed in their traditional public schools, and for some, the orchestra program is the key reason.
So Chris, they obviously love it. Now they get to play at Carnegie Hall, right?
Absolutely. There's still a lot of work ahead though. They'll have a full dress rehearsal on Tuesday, March 28th at the Grand Opera House. And meanwhile, some students are still trying to raise money for the trip, which costs about $1,000 a piece.
Well, Chris, I'd like to pick your brain for a bit. For those of you watching, his face may not look familiar, but the name should be. You come to WHYY after a long tenure at the News Journal. Now your beat is education. Tell me about that.
Education, it's a new journalistic subject for me, but I'll be using my skills as an investigative reporter to dig deep into K-12 education here in Delaware. We spend some $2 billion a year, so I'll be watching how the money is spent and evaluating whether it's working.
Sounds like you're going to be pretty busy, Chris. How are things working out for you?
I'm trying to get the lay of the land, but here's some troubling facts to ponder. Nearly 9 in 10 public school students graduate high school in Delaware, yet barely half are proficient in English and only 40% in math. So there's a lot to focus on. And we'll also have time for stories like this ensemble from Brandywine.
Chris Barish is the new Delaware education reporter. See more of his work here on First and read more of his stories at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Finding First online is a way to watch the program on your terms. Go to WHYY.org/first. This show is there now. Past shows are there too.
In his monthly business segment, First business contributor Dave Blaskovitz sits down with Dennis O'Brien and Christopher Cunahan of the company China Marine. The topic is a new type of building material that has some international implications.
Chris, welcome to the segment.
Thank you.
Dr. O'Brien, Dennis O'Brien, welcome back to the segment.
Thank you.
Let's start here. Why are we here today?
Because we're in deep trouble here in Wilmington. We have a lot of problems going on in both the city and state level, and soon to be a county level if you listen to the stories that are going around about how they're going to raise the taxes. For sure, we're going to lose at least $386 million in the next year. I won't go through why, but that's true. I happen to believe, I'm an econometrician, and it's going to be even worse than that. Number two, we have a city that has a crime rate that's unbelievable, okay? Last year, we were Murder City, according to Newsweek, I think it was, magazine. I forget how many people have been killed so far this year, but somebody told me it's more than all the people who were killed in Europe last year, okay? Unbelievable.
Let's turn it positive just a minute. Well, not yet, but let's talk about the numbers. 1,600 homes. What are the numbers on the residents or the homes?
1,600 homes have to be demolished, okay? They're not only substandard, they're absolutely slums, okay? And the mayor of the city has come out and said, we have to redo the city, 1,600 homes. I'll get into this later, but one of the problems is, how are you going to take people who are living in these homes, demolish the homes, replace the homes, and move back in? What are you going to do in the meanwhile?
And that answer is, Chris, let's get you involved. That's why you're here. Tell us about China Marine and the idea you're presenting to the state of Delaware.
So China Marine is a new company that we've put together that is partnered with a company in China, Maristar, that's been building shipping containers for decades. And what they've done about 6 years ago is they started using their factories to build and fully complete modular housing units out of these shipping containers. And these modular units are completely from top to bottom, not just electrical wiring and plumbing, but the fit and finish and cabinetry, everything completely done for $40 per square foot, which new construction comparable in the United States starts at least $110 per square foot. So they do it much more efficiently, and then they put it on the boats and they send it over to the Port of Wilmington nearby. And we unload it with American workers. We transport it with American workers. They stack together like Legos, where plumbers and electricians, local hires, can complete them. And when they're finished, they look exactly like the row homes that existed there decades before.
They're Legos. You can actually build a skyscraper with them. They're 35 stories high. They've done it in Singapore. They've done it in Canada. They've done it in Australia, as well as all throughout China. Or you can build a house that looks like a brownstone in New York, like Singing in the Rain, if you remember that story. The facade doesn't mean anything. You can put brick, you can put clapboard, you can put stone on it.
And the financing works. Tell that story.
Financing comes from the Chinese. The Chinese will lend mortgages to the Americans because it's the Chinese Development Bank. They want to get the homes out of China into the United States. So they'll gladly do that to get a vitro. The mortgages, they should be backed by the House, which they will be, but also by HUD, okay? HUD is now run by a Republican, a great guy, Dr. Ben Carson, who definitely knows what the problem with slums are from where he grew up and from the fact that he worked down in Baltimore and Johns Hopkins.
And by the way, is this a Wilmington story or a Baltimore story briefly or both?
Well, our senior partner is Dr. Stephen J. Brown. He's from Baltimore, okay? And he's on one of the boards of Johns Hopkins. So it started off as a Baltimore story. But I talked to Senator Carper and to his aide, Larry Winley, and they said, geez, we want to do this in Wilmington. Now, Secretary of State Bullock had originally come out with the idea of the Chinese helping to rebuild the port. And I was involved in that, and I said, well, we know the cost of rebuilding the port, but where the hell is the demand coming from that justifies that? What's the net new demand? And nobody seemed to get a handle on that. Well, this is net new demand. These are new ships coming in with new products that are labor intensive in terms of the longshoremen lifting them off and putting them on to the trucks and railroad cars.
I got to interrupt. We had
Sure,
the last question here. you're our China expert. Big picture, your thoughts on China and Trump, your thoughts?
First of all, Trump is a deal maker, okay? And so you have to think about that. He sets the stage for a deal. Here's what's happening with China, and I'll ask the audience real fast. If you removed all of the barriers to immigration, both economic and political, how many people would move to America? How many people would move to China? In economics, that's called the general equilibrium. You know where this is heading. It's a question of how we get there. The Chinese have run out of workers. The workforce went negative. They are running out of people. The population goes negative in 2030. The one-child policy established by Mayo is killing them right now because their labor force is declining. They're totally depending on productivity increase. That's why they're stealing our patents. And they're totally dependent on full productivity, which means they have to get people educated. That's why they're sending their kids to the University of Delaware. So who's going to win?
Gentlemen, great segment. Thank you.
Our thanks to Dace Blaskovitz. Now, Dennis O'Brien has lectured extensively on the Chinese economy. Chris Cunahan also teaches at the University of Delaware.
Thinking about places where you can learn the latest trends in social media? How about trying to earn a certificate in Microsoft Office? What if you wanted to post your original content to a streaming service for all to see? You could be looking for Act Generation. It's the latest entrepreneurial effort in Wilmington. Travis Smith Sr. is no stranger to hard work.
When I was 13, part of that process, I co-founded a group called Russell Delegation.
Smith played piano for the gospel recording group while balancing school and his other job, working for his parents.
I grew up on East 24th Street, right in Wilmington, right in downtown, right in Wilmington rather. But then my family opened a business up in 1970, Sepia Cleaners. Growing up with an entrepreneurial family, you know, you work all the time.
Smith credits what he calls his serial entrepreneurial spirit to his parents, Charles and Naomi, who were recently honored with a street named after them in Southbridge. He also credits his supportive siblings.
My brother Mark and my brother Charles Jr. and then my sister Denise. They never would say, no. It was always like, okay, especially Mark. Travis has the idea, then let's go. And that makes a difference.
So when the former IT expert decided to tap into his severance from AstraZeneca to create a school that offered the latest in technology and communications, his family didn't hesitate to back him.
I am founder, president, and CEO of Act Generation. Act Generation, which is our audio, video, communication technology school, first of its kind in the state of Delaware.
Step inside Act Generation, and you may think you walked into an art gallery. The creativity flowing through the reception area is just a snippet of what's being created within this company.
Act Generation is a training school. We are certified by the Delaware Department of Education as a private business and trade school for adult education, and we have 3 core competencies: audiovisual, communications, and technology, hence ACT or ACT.
The school offers 9 certificate courses, which include digital media, business support, and e-commerce drone operation. But that's not all.
So we have the Act Generation Training School, we have the ACT Boom, which is a online digital network. We also have e-discipleship, which is a portal for churches and organizations where the members can communicate across the organization.
There are 100 channels of original content available on the Act Boom digital network, which you can access via a streaming device. ActGen also offers free weekend sessions once a month for those who want to understand social media better. And Smith is working with a local producer on a sitcom about a Wilmington family. It's called It's All Good in the Hood.
As a child, photographer Eric Zippy learned to appreciate nature, especially the trees. In a new exhibit, Eric returned to his roots, using wood, metal, and paper to showcase the photographs of the things that inspire him, the trees. Eric's work is our first experience this week.
I'm a Delaware native and photographer. A lot of my work is based around the trees, especially trees in Delaware. I grew up on a farm near Blackbird State Forest area. My dad would take us out on our downtime on the farm in the wintertime. He would take us out walking in the woods. He would teach us how to identify trees by their bark, by their shapes. It started a lifelong love of nature for me, and it's just carried on. I'm going to dedicate this show to my father. This show for me is in his memory. I wanted to be a realist painter. I started photography as my way of capturing that, and it became my medium. I did end up starting to do painting, but my paintings were more abstract. If I want to do realism, why not a photograph? There's something to experience the splendor of a tree in person, to hear the leaves rustling, or just the smell comes up around the dirt. I think that's one thing that's lost a lot, is just exploring the actual physical world these days. There's a lot that goes into when you view an image and seeing how I want the outcome to be. And sometimes I've printed stuff on the paper, but then I put it onto the wood and it sings, the image comes alive. I don't want to also limit somebody who loves my images from being able to experience it or take it home and put it into their world. A lot of people, photographers and stuff, will stop photographing when it gets cold, the leaves are off the trees, there's no flamboyant colors and stuff like that. For me, the soul, the essence of the tree comes alive. You can see the shapes, you can see damage that's been done through the years. You just see the true character of a tree. If it's not seen and it's not put out there, I'm just making it for myself, but I want the joy that I get from the creation and the making of it to be shown to other people, and I want them to experience my joy when I make my images. The biggest thing I want is to expand what is thought of as photography. I do a lot of shows, a lot of festivals, and everybody that comes in is like, this is photography? What's your process? It's funny, I've actually had people tell me, no, this is a painting. I said, no, this is a photograph. For me, I want them to take away a sense of beauty. When somebody walks in or sees my image and they gasp, I've seen this more than a few times. To me, that's the biggest reward I get of an artist, that I get somebody to take their time and just, wow.
Eric's show at the Mezzanine Gallery in Wilmington's Carvel State Office Building will be on display now through March 31st. Eric takes pictures of more than just trees, too. You can see more of his work on his Etsy shop, Eric Zippy Image Maker. For more information on exhibits at the Mezzanine Gallery, visit artsdel.org.
Next week on First, we'll head to Sussex County, where the next Compassion Center is about to open to the public, and a generous donation of classic books comes to the University of Delaware from a blind collector.
Join us for those stories and a conversation with Governor John Carney as well. To review what's in his budget, go to newsworks.org/Delaware. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Shirley Min and Mark Eichman, I'm Nichelle Polson. Have a great week.